Jean breaks silence. Jungkook is not that kind of person. Heartfelt defense leaves ARMY in tears. Why did he wait so long to speak? For days, the world watched in painful suspense as controversy surged around BTS's youngest member, Jungkook. A hat, just a hat, had ignited flames of outrage across Korean online communities, turning admiration into interrogation. Fans were torn, critics were merciless, and amidst the storm of anger, one question echoed through the fandom. Where was the rest of BTS? Why hadn't anyone stepped forward? And then, without warning, he did a moment that silenced even the harshest critics. Jean, the eldest, the protector, the anchor of BTS, broke his silence. And he did not come gently. He spoke not as an idol bound by scripted PR lines, but as a brother, a friend, a man standing in the gap when the world seemed intent on misunderstanding the one he helped raise in the limelight. With trembling honesty and unmistakable frustration, Jin's message pierced through the noise. Jungkook is not that kind of person. If you've watched him for even a moment, not as a celebrity but as a human being, you'd know this wasn't intentional. He's the kind of person who blames himself too quickly, even for things outside his control. Please look deeper before judging. The message, posted through a now viral Weverse note and later echoed during a quiet live stream, wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It was real. And for ARMY, it was everything. Because for days, Jungkook had remained heartbreakingly quiet. His brief, somber apology had done little to calm the storm that was raging across online platforms. Accusations were being thrown, his motives questioned, his patriotism doubted. The phrase printed on his hat, "Make Tokyo Great Again," was interpreted by many as a painful reminder of historical wounds that South Korea has never forgotten. Even though Jungkook issued a statement of regret and clarified that he did not know the political associations of the phrase, many didn't want to listen. In a country still deeply scarred by its past with Japan, emotions do not easily yield to explanations. But then came Jean, the one who always listens, finally urging the world to do the same. He didn't just defend Jungkook. He pleaded. He reminded everyone that they weren't just criticizing a celebrity. They were crushing a human being under the weight of assumptions. He cried about this, Jean admitted in a hushed tone during his short broadcast. He asked me if he ruined everything. I had to remind him who he is, not who people are trying to say he is. He's not careless. He's not insensitive. He's someone who carries the world on his shoulders because he loves so deeply. That was the moment that shattered ARMY, because behind every rumor, every cancel hashtag, every screenshot taken out of context, there was still the same boy who wrote "Still with You," who sobbed while bowing at the end of his first solo stage, who never left the studio until every second of music felt right. He didn't wear a slogan to provoke. He wore a hat without knowing it would carry the weight of generations. And now, thanks to Jin's raw defense, the tide is beginning to turn. Fans are rallying again, not out of blind loyalty, but because they remember the years of humility, charity, and grace Jungkook has shown. From standing quietly behind his hyungs to quietly donating to families in need, Jungkook has never once acted like a man hungry for controversy, and yet, the world turned against him overnight. "I should have said something sooner," Jean wrote at the end of his note. "But I wanted to say the right thing, not just the first thing." That sentence has become a rallying cry for fans who had been feeling helpless. A moment of clarity in a week that has felt like emotional freefall. Even the harshest Korean forums began shifting after Jin's message. Several top comments changed from condemnation to compassion. If even Jean speaks up, maybe we misread the situation. The sincerity of his words. "I feel ashamed for jumping to conclusions. Jean made me cry." He really sees Jungkook, not as a product, but as a person. This is more than damage control. This is brotherhood. This is what BTS has always stood for. Truth spoken in love, especially when it's hardest, and Jungkook, he has responded to Jin's message publicly. But fans noticed his profile picture changed. A quiet gesture. No words. Just a photo of the BTS members during their trainee days, arms wrapped around one another, Young, unknown, unbreakable, did I S it a sign? Maybe it's just a reminder that he remembers who he is too. And with Jean beside him, with ARMY behind him, maybe that's enough for now. But as the dust begins to settle, one undeniable truth remains. Not all controversies reveal scandal. Some reveal loyalty, family, and the courage it takes to defend someone you love when the world is determined to rewrite their story. Maybe the real headline isn't the mistake that made Jungkook cry. Maybe it's the brother who made him believe he still had the right to stand tall. Jean broke the silence. And in doing so, he gave Jungkook his voice back. And yet, the world isn't done watching. Because while Jin's words have softened many hearts, the conversation hasn't ended. It's simply transformed. What began as a firestorm of criticism has now shifted into a wave of introspection across ARMY, the K-pop industry, and even Korean media circles. If one of the most respected idols in South Korea can be caught in the crosshairs of misunderstood symbolism, what does that say about the hyper-scrutinized lives these stars are forced to live? There is something profoundly unsettling about watching a 27-year-old man, known globally for his artistry, discipline, and humility, reduced to a slogan on a hat. As more fans began digging deeper, a chilling detail emerged. The controversial hat wasn't even his. Several insider fan accounts with links to staff claimed it was handed to Jungkook minutes before rehearsal, as part of a wardrobe handoff for a low-key dress run. He hadn't chosen it. He hadn't endorsed it. He'd simply worn it, without noticing the 6 words that would bring an avalanche crashing down. But that detail, while critical, was lost in the early chaos. Screenshots were circulated without context. Translations were skewed. Tweets became headlines. And in a matter of hours, the nuance was gone. And now the spotlight turns not just on Jungkook, but on all of us, because Jin's defense has peeled back the curtain, not just on his love for his younger brother, but on the larger, more uncomfortable truth that the pressure we place on idols is no longer human. Every movement, every accessory, every breath is analyzed through 1,000 different political, historical, and cultural lenses. And when mistakes do happen, and they will, we forget that behind the lens is a beating heart that still hurts, still hopes, still tries. One fan tweeted, "Jean reminded me why I fell in love with BTS. They've always protected each other. And now he's protecting us too." Another, whose comment went viral, wrote simply, "I was angry at Jungkook until I realized I'd forgotten how young he was. Thanks, Jean, for bringing me back." But even as love returns, questions linger. Will Korean media issue the same retractions they rushed to print in outrage? Will the individuals who trended hashtags designed to cancel Jungkook acknowledge that they judged him without full knowledge? And most painfully, will Jungkook himself ever truly recover from the emotional scars this left behind? Because, make no mistake, he was hurt. Fans spotted it in his shaky Weverse update, in the absence of his usual emojis, in the fact that his apology came at 2:47 a.m., a time when most are asleep, but guilt keeps the sensitive awake. "I feel heavy writing this. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I didn't fully understand. I'll be more careful in the future," he wrote, every line aching with remorse. It wasn't just a public relations statement. It was a confession, a burden unloaded by a man who, for all his global fame, still bows 90 degrees when he greets staff backstage. And yet, even now, some refuse to forgive. He should have known better, they argue. Ignorance isn't an excuse. But Jean challenged that notion directly. In his message, he asked a powerful question that's still echoing through fandom spaces. If we don't allow good people to make mistakes and grow from them, what are we asking them to be? Robots? That line has since been reposted thousands of times, shared across platforms, quoted in editorials. Because it's a challenge not just to netizens, but to a culture that sometimes confuses accountability with annihilation. And amid this cultural reckoning, an important shift has begun. Fans have started reclaiming the narrative, posting memories of Jungkook that reflect who he really is. An artist who gave up his teenage years to perfect his craft, a man who donates quietly to families in need, an idol who cries backstage when he feels he's let down his fans by a touching tribute. Armies began trending the hashtag #Jungkook. We believe in Jungkook. Underneath it, stories poured in. He paid for my cousin's surgery anonymously when her GoFundMe failed. He stopped our rehearsal to make sure a backup dancer, who twisted her ankle, was okay. He covered my little brother's face with a towel when a taehyung tried to film him during a hotel visit. He didn't even know us. This is the Jungkook Jeon was speaking about. The Jungkook who blames himself for missed notes, who doesn't leave the stage until the last fan has been acknowledged, who calls his hyungs even when they're apart just to say thank you, and when Jeon stood up for him, he wasn't just protecting a bandmate. He was standing between Jungkook and a world that had momentarily forgotten all of that. In the days since Jin's message, fans have also begun reflecting on his strength. Having just returned from his own military service, many expected him to rest, to ease back into the spotlight. Instead, he walked into the flames to shield someone else, because that's who he's always been, the eldest who carries pain silently. The voice of reason when the team wavers. The one who once stayed up until dawn making steamed buns for Jungkook after a particularly exhausting day. That moment, immortalized in a behind-the-scenes clip from 2016, has now resurfaced, flooding social media as a symbol of unwavering love. And it begs the question, who protects the protectors? For now, Jeon is standing firm. But fans are urging Big Hit to provide better support, clearer protocols, and cultural briefings to prevent such accidents in the future. Because as K-pop continues to expand globally, the risk of cultural misunderstanding will only increase. But perhaps, amid the mess, there's something beautiful in the storm, because once again, BTS is doing what they've always done, teaching us how to be human, how to apologize, how to forgive, how to speak when it's hard, and most importantly, how to stand together when the world tries to pull you apart. As Jungkook finds his footing again, with Jeon beside him and ARMY lifting him up. Maybe this chapter will mark not his fall, but his rising, and maybe the real story isn't about a hat, or even a controversy. Maybe it's about a man who fell under the weight of a misunderstanding, and a brother who reached out and said, "I see you, I know your heart, and I will not let the world forget who you are." Jungkook is not that kind of person, but Jeon, he's exactly the kind of person this world needs more of, and thanks to him, so many now remember why they believed in BTS in the first place.